Welcome to Find My Past from Home.
Hello everybody and welcome to another Find My Past live. It is Friday, it is 4 o'clock, so we are of course here to talk about the new records, a little bit of history and everything else that is going on. If you are new around here, my name is Liam in the social media team here at Find My Past, and we also have my colleague Ellie in the comments today as well, so be sure to say hello to both of us. Let us know where you are tuning in from. How is the weather looking where you are? You know, we like a little weather report here. What are you up to at the weekend? What's going on? How's the research going? All of that good stuff. Let us know, as I say, how you are all doing. Nice to see we have some early joiners. Before I'd even hit the button to go live today, I already had a comment in, so it's only right we do Shirley first. From a rather hot Cambridgeshire, 30 degrees Celsius here. Very nice indeed. Only about 20 here, although I am off down south after the session today, so I'll hopefully get some of the sunshine that I hear that you all have. It's been one of those annoying weeks when you're speaking to colleagues around the business and they're complaining about the heat and everything like that, and you just don't have it here as well. So it's one of those weeks, one of those summers, I think, as well. We have got William, another one nice and early, very warm in Cymru today. Victoria, it was lightning quick. It was lightning quick, and it was even me delayed slightly because I could not find the button to play the little intro there, and I did play the wrong one as well. I played Find My Past from Home, which feels like a long time ago we were calling it Find My Past from Home, so it was maybe a little bit too quick, Victoria, so apologies, but glad you are with us here today. A lot of the regulars as well. Very nice to see. We've got Andrea from sunny Stoke-on-Trent, David over on YouTube, very hot Somerset as well. I'm just going to stop reading the fact that it's hot because, as I say, I'm already being jealous enough speaking to all my colleagues all this week, so I don't need to hear it from all yourselves as well. I regret asking about the weather because everyone is saying how nice and hot it is as well. Rosie the same. Karen, Jan, Sue Moon is over on YouTube today. Facebook not connecting. You know we love a little gremlin on our Fridays live as well, so it is always good. Sue is also doing a cheese and chili festival tomorrow. That sounds very nice indeed, actually, Sue Moon. I'm very jealous of that cheese and chili festival. Never heard of a cheese and chili festival before, I will say. So that sounds, as I say, pretty good. I would be very jealous. Wish I was joining yourselves there as well. And yet, all of the regulars, we've got Jean, we've got Heather, Elaine, Gina, Gordon over in Alberta as well. An international audience, as I always kind of say this, but it is just amazing. Given the time difference, you've got people all over the Atlantic, both sides of the Atlantic, joining in with us today. So as I say, it is always nice to see, despite the time difference, despite the weather we're all facing. I say we all, not me, everyone but me apparently. Even Ellie's got sunshine, or has got heat in Edinburgh, it seems. But as I say, it's always lovely for you all to take some time out of your Friday and join us here on Facebook Live. We do, of course, have new records to talk about. And as you may have seen from the title of the session, we are also going to talk about the moon landing. Tomorrow is the anniversary of the moon landing, so I thought we would have a little bit look through the newspapers, see kind of how that was being reported at the time as well. We know newspapers are, of course, an important resource for family history and, of course, social history, general history as well. And I think the moon landing is one of those monumental events. So whether it was yourselves that lived through it, your parents that lived through it, as I say, it's always interesting, I think, to see how things were reported at the time as well, especially something like the moon landing. I can't remember ever not being aware of the moon landing, but yeah, this afternoon, spending some time with that important resource, the newspapers, and just digging through how it was reported at the time, I think it's always really good and interesting. So hopefully you all enjoy that as well. And I will just bring this as well, Victoria, that very glad to hear it as well. Cyber difficulties all around the world. I've seen that this morning when I woke up. There was messages in my group chat already, people saying they'd been told not to even open their work computers because there was difficulties already. So a few of my friends kind of got the morning off, but we weren't affected, thankfully. I'm glad to see none of you were as well. You were all here with us as well. So cyber difficulties, hot weather, whatever it might be, we are live on Facebook. So as I say, Definitely. So we do also have a question of the week, which I can see Daphne has already answered as well. So I will pop that on screen because I'm likely to jump into the next segment and forget all about it. So I will pop that on screen now. This is a discussion that we had kind of a while ago. I think it was these sessions kind of, I lose track of what happened. But we did have this kind of discussion a bit of a while ago. But it's a discussion that myself and Ellie have been having this week as well, just kind of seeing what are we doing on the Fridays Live? What do people enjoy? Because that is the most important thing, of course, is that the people tuning in enjoy it. It's nice when we get something we enjoy talking about as well, of course. But as I say, it is what you, the viewer, wants to see. So what would you like to see more of on these sessions? Are there any sort of topics, any segments, any sort of tutorials, different things like that? Like, for example, today I'm talking about the moon landing because it is the anniversary of that tomorrow. Do you like that sort of historical side of things as well as the family history? Not instead of course, as well as the family history. As I say, segments, topics, tutorials. What would you like to see? What would you like to see us do more of or do less of as well? If you don't like the historical side of things, for example, you prefer just the family history, that's absolutely fine. Let us know that as well, because as I say, your feedback is always important, whether it's about these sessions, whether it is about the website, the features, the records, whatever it might be. As I say, we are always happy to hear your feedback and take that on board, especially when I say myself and Ellie are having those kind of thinking sessions ourselves as well. It'd be really nice for you all to be able to feed into that as well. So definitely nice to hear some suggestions, and we can see them already coming in. So very good indeed. So we will do the new records first of all, and then we will have a look at some question of the weeks, and then we will have a look at the moon landing, as I just said. Already forgotten what I was going to talk about. Heads up, I know I say this quite a lot. I am aiming for a slightly shorter session today. I'm not talking 4:30 or anything like that, but I do have a train to catch quite soon after work. So just to make sure I'm all wrapped up and everything is ready to go for 5 o'clock on Friday, I might jump off 10-15 minutes early. As I say, nothing crazy, not too early. But as I say, we will go for the new records first of all and see what we have this week. So first of all, we have the National School Admission Registers, an update to this existing collection online. I will admit this is one that I've not really used a great deal myself. I think I maybe had a look into it previously and didn't really find anyone in it there. I've always wanted to be able to find stuff in this. I think it's a really cool collection, especially some of the details you see about it, whether it's parents' details, addresses, exam results, different things like that. I think even just schools, what school they were at in between those kind of census years and kind of more recently than that as well. I think it's a really cool record set, as I say, one I would definitely like to be able to use more of in my own research. So for this update, we have 6,600 new images and transcriptions. They are all from the Latimer Upper School in Middlesex. So if that is a school that you recognize or an area that you recognize in your research, a very good one there, especially if your family were there for a number of years, because these 6,600 new records cover from 1870 to 1914. So as I say, a good span, almost 50 years worth of school records being added for that particular school. So as I say, that is a school and an area that you recognize from your research. Hopefully be a good number of ancestors in there for you as well. And I can already see one person excited about the next collection that we're going to talk about there as well. Spoiler alert, Karen is going to update her British India talks for the new India directories. Great stuff, Karen. Glad that's one job for you over the weekend anyway with these new record sets as well. And I will admit, when I saw what the new records were at the start of the week, I did think that you might be excited about these ones. So glad you are here joining us. And as I say, they're already proven useful and feeding into your talks. So we do, as I say, spoiler alert, have updates to the British in India directories. These are 104,000 new records and images added to these records, and they cover the whole time of British in India, right from the start, right through to kind of post-independence, kind of late 1940s as well. So again, a really nice long span, and I'm sure, much like Karen, a lot of people do have ancestors who spent time in India during that time period. So definitely a kind of good one for a lot of people, I'm sure, as well. And of course, we do have new newspapers as well. We've got quite a lot of new newspapers this week, actually. We have got 202,000 new pages added to the collection this week, including 2 brand new titles as well. So we have the Glossop Times. They are from 1877, then 1889 to 1891, and 1894. And then we've got kind of a bit of sporadic years from the Milton Keynes Citizen as well. We've got 1989, 1993, and 1995. Those are the new titles, as I say, those 2 new titles, but we do have updates to a lot of existing newspapers as well. If I can just find my list here. Again, I really like when the kind of newspaper list spans all up and down the country. You've got places like Coleraine in Northern Ireland. You've got Eastbourne, Kilsyth, Kirriemuir, Morecambe, Skegness, Worthing, St Andrews. So as I say, a nice kind of collection of places for us all. I think it's nice, as I say, when almost everyone can get involved, and it's covering up and down the country, Britain and Ireland, sometimes even overseas as well. I think it's always really nice to see a kind of broad selection of newspapers coming in. So hopefully those places are helpful for your research. As always, head over to the blog for a full breakdown of this week's new records and a full list of this week's new newspapers as well, with the dates available too. All of the dates that have been added are in the blog as well, which Daisy always puts together for us, which is nice and helpful. And I'm sure Ellie will link that in the comments any minute now. And as you can jump over and get the full breakdown. I will say about these sessions that working from home is not ideal because you go all day barely saying a word. I think I only had 1 meeting quite early this morning, barely spoken aloud since then. And then I come on here and I end up talking for 45, 50 minutes non-stop. So it always kind of takes it out of me, as I say, but we'll persevere. We'll always persevere. So as I said, those are the new records. We will do some of the question of the week answers now. I know a lot of people have some really good ideas that I've spotted coming in already. So we will run through some of them just now, and then we'll have a look at the moon landings, and then we will kind of wrap up with some more suggestions. And as Ellie said in the comments as well, she is recording these as well. She is any feedback that we get, anything we think will feed in nicely to what we're looking at for the Fridays Live, Ellie will be taking notes as well. So pop it in the comments. Even if I don't happen to read it out loud, does not mean we're not taking it on board. As I say, Ellie will be meticulously collecting all of your feedback. So definitely keep them coming. So let's have a look at some of the answers. I will just pop that on screen one more time as well for any late joiners. What would you like to see more of on these sessions? When we go live every single Friday, what would you like to see us do more? Or as I said, less of as well. You may have seen me kind of have a little giggle as I started doing the new sessions because I did see someone requesting less of something, or none of something, I should say, which is a bit of a personal attack, I will say. I will start off with that one, because I know it's aimed at me, but I can appreciate that. I can take this one on the chin. Daphne started us off with no football, under no circumstances to talk about football. And that's absolutely fine, Daphne. As I said, if it's more or less or something, and I know that one is going to be aimed at me. I know I'm the one that kind of shoehorns in here and there. So taking that one on the board, not saying I won't strike it off Ellie's notes once they're all compiled in a document for me to review, but as I say, even if it's less of something or none of something, definitely let us know. But what else do we have? Daphne would like to see a kind of return of the Let's Discuss segment as well. And I think that's, a really good idea. I like those kind of open discussions that we have as well. Some of my favorite sessions I've done are when we're just kind of chatting as well. There's not really anything, not got loads of slides on screen, or I'm not talking non-stop, as the case may be. I like those ones where we have that little back and forth, like when we spoke about the Chelsea Flower Show in the 1970s. We just kind of had a bit of a collective chat, a collective reminisce. I like those Let's Discuss. And of course, that could cover anything as well, whether it's the 1970s, it's the research, it's whatever it might be. I like that idea as well. Let's see, what else do we have? Victoria, tips and tricks to get the best of the website so we can find and save records quicker. Yeah, absolutely. Tips and tricks is something that we did used to do quite a lot of, but for maybe it's just myself, for whatever reason, I've kind of slowed down on the tips and tricks side of things. So yeah, definitely something we can have a look at getting more into. And speaking of the kind of events side of things, the Chelsea Flower Show, William would like to see some revisits to previous things, like the events. Had good fun at Quarry Bank at the event. Maybe we need to share things from the day with people on the live sessions from what has happened before. Yeah, absolutely. As I say, whether it's the Chelsea Flower Show or Quarry Bank, as I say, not everyone was as lucky as yourself to be able to join us there. And it was, of course, great to see yourself and anyone as well, whether it was Quarry Bank or it was the Savoy the year before, and we saw a lot of people there as well. So yeah, as I say, kind of recapping these events and seeing what went on at the event, almost having like a kind of a virtual version of it almost to catch everyone up on. Because as great as it is to see people like yourself at these events, we know, of course, that not everyone can always make it. So it is always good to see people there as well and catch them all up. This one I really like as well, skills sharing and hive mind researching people's brick walls. I really like that one as well. People kind of submitting ideas in advance and then us kind of working as a team, whether it's myself hosting or even a joint session. We could get someone like Jen to come on. Of course, she's my expert anyway. She's the one I go to. She's probably best qualified to do that one. But as I say, we all know a little bit or two, some more than others. Myself, maybe near the bottom of the list, shall we say. But I like that as well. We can work together. We can get the chat involved. We can be sending links, opening links back and forth. And yeah, I really like that idea as well. I think that would be a good session as well. And a few more kind of tutorials and tips as well. And along the same kind of things as well, tutorial on finding articles in the newspapers. Yeah, definitely. Newspapers is something that we talk about every single week, of course. We're adding new newspapers every single week, but kind of going more into detail as to kind of how to use the newspapers as well. And I know we've had special guests in the past as well. We've had the likes of Adrian, Chris, and Martin talking about newspapers, talking about how to get the most out of those kind of newspaper searches as well. So yeah, it'd be good getting more people like that, or even just taking it back to basics, doing things from the start as well. We're all at different levels, as I say, even within the hosting team, within the chat as well. We'll all be at different stages of our research, some very near the start, some very advanced as well. So yeah, it'd be nice to kind of, as I say, just do a kind of complete tutorial almost as well. And yeah, I definitely agree with Kim as well. And the guest speakers and all of their wonderful knowledge. It's always great, like I just mentioned there, Chris, Adrian, Martin. We've had Maddie. We've tried to have David from the podcast, but the technical issues did take place, although we did mention maybe trying to get him back on in the future to do a little bit more about that side of things as well. So yeah, the guest speakers is definitely something that I like doing as well. And I know that everyone likes having a guest on as well. So that is 1, 2, and along the kind of presenter host side of things as well. I very much appreciate this, Victoria. Always keep the variety, please, from presenters to topics to tutorials. A big thank you for all your efforts. Thank you very much indeed, Victoria. I cannot remember a single session, whether I've been hosting, I've been doing the comments, or I've just popped in for a look, that you haven't been here, amongst many others. Of course, there are loads of regulars, like I said at the start. Always appreciate it as well. But I'm glad that you're thanking us. But as I say, we thank you as well, because it's Friday afternoon. As Frank Sinatra said, you could be anywhere in the world, but you're here with us. And we always appreciate that. So as I say, very grateful and glad that everyone enjoys them as well. And I like that variety thing as well. We're not going to hone in too much on one side of things. You might get more family history last week, more kind of history this week, something completely different next week. So we like keeping the variety as well. And we like kind of keeping things fresh. And as I say, I'm glad that people enjoy that as well. So that is definitely glad to hear. I know we've got a lot of suggestions coming in. I will put a pin in that for now. But as I say, keep them coming in. I will come back later on in the session and read some more of them out. But as Ellie says, if she isn't chatting much, it's because she's taking lots of notes. So even if I don't get a chance to read your particular suggestion out, it does not mean we're not taking it on board. Ellie will be frantically copy-pasting all of these, categorizing them, I've seen a lot of Ellie's Word documents. They're always very well organised, very well presented. So I know she will be sweating over that at the moment and getting them all nice and organised for myself, for her to have a look through as well. So as I say, even if we don't get a chance to read it out, does not mean we disagree. It just means, as I say, we've got so many good suggestions in here. You're all full of good suggestions. So Ellie will be frantically writing them down. Oh, sorry, copy pasting and writing them out. I should have known a hardcore journaler. I was going to say journalist, a bullet journal. My lasting memory of Ellie in customer support is her bullet journal and how amazing it looked. So she will be writing them out. Apologies, not copy pasting to undermine the work there as well. So definitely apologies, Ellie. But yeah, as I say, keep them coming. Keep them short, maybe. If Ellie's going to be handwriting them out, keep them short, maybe, just to make her life a little bit easier. Perfect. So yeah, we are going to have a look at the moon landing today. I was having a look through my kind of calendar and seeing what events were coming up, what kind of historical anniversaries. I love my historical anniversary calendar. Always full of good ideas when it comes to Fridays Live. Just have a look at the last kind of week or so, see what I might have missed and see what I can talk about today. And funnily enough, tomorrow, the 20th of July, is the anniversary of the moon landing. It was the 20th of July that happened. So we will be having a look at the kind of story of the moon landing. We've got some stuff leading up to the moon landing, some stuff from the moon landing itself, and then some kind of nice little tidbits that I've picked up along the way. Things that I didn't know about the moon landing, maybe some things that you didn't know about the moon landing. But I know a lot of people at the start were sharing their kind of thoughts and memories on the moon landing as well. So if you do remember the moon landing, maybe you even have a kind of ancestral connection to the moon landing. If your parents were, if one of your ancestors, was involved, or even if it's just something that you remember about staying up. I know a lot of people kind of already spoken about kind of staying up to watch the moon landing. I know that was a big thing. I remember my dad talking about that. He'd have been about 10 at the time or so, just gone 10. So I know that was a big thing. If you had a TV at the time, of course. I know my dad, when he was younger, used to say that people would always gather at one house that had a TV to watch. The snooker is the one that I remember most that he spoke about, is, to be honest, as well. So as I say, keep your memories of the moon landing coming, whether it's ancestral connections, whether it's just your personal memory of staying up to watch it, or the days after that as well. Definitely let us know as we are going through the newspapers. So as Ellie has put in the comments as well, I did kind of throw together a collection of newspapers on the moon landing earlier on today. Not everything that I put on screen is in the collection yet. Sometimes I'm a little bit rushed putting these sessions together, so I didn't maybe get a chance to copy everything over, but that is on my list. I've already got that as one of my jobs on Monday, to tidy that up a little bit as well. So if you're seeing anything on screen that you want to know more about and it maybe isn't in the collection yet, bear with me. You might get that come Monday, come Tuesday at the latest. I'll have that nice and tidy for you, have everything all in one place. But yeah, let's have a look. So as I said, we are going to start kind of quite early on. When I was having a look at the moon landing, I think one of my first kind of thoughts is having a look at the reports of the moon landing the morning after. It was in the very early hours of the 20th of July, so it would have been in time for the kind of make the front page news on the 20th of July UK time, of course. It would have made the front page news. So I think my kind of first instinct is to always go to the front page and see the images, see the headlines. But one thing that I did when I was having a look through it today was kind of going back a little bit as well, popping in those keywords, but maybe not going straight to 1969, maybe going the months leading up to 1969 as well, because I think that's, as I say, something that I like the most about the newspapers, I will say, when it comes to historical events, is that you're not just seeing the event happen and then that's over with. You can see the lead up, you can see the event, you can see the aftermath. And I think, as I say, it's one of my favorite things about newspaper research is following the story as well, right from the start. For example, this is the Coventry Evening Telegraph from the 11th of October, 1968. And this was to find this, I put in Apollo 11, the name of the ship, but this was Apollo goes on an 11-day trip. So this was actually Apollo 8, it was, if I remember correctly. I knew I should have taken more notes before I went live and did this. This was Apollo 8 that it was doing almost like a test run for it. So it was a kind of a look at the kind of trial ships almost in the lead up to the moon landing, trying to get that little bit further as well, and just see kind of going into orbit, getting closer and closer to the moon. And as I say, that's one of my favorite things, because when I think about the moon landing, I just think about the moon landing. I don't think about in 1968, and of course pre-1968 as well. All these kind of things were going on in the background in the space race and leading up to the moon landing as well. And I think it's interesting when you're seeing the newspaper articles as well, that they're saying things like it would be a big leap forward in America's quest to land a man on the moon by the end of the decade, and before the Russians as well. That was the big thing, of course, in the space race, was being the first ones to do it. So it's, as I say, interesting to see the sort of language being used already, even as far back as 1968. And like I say, there's stuff going back before then as well. And you can see this one. I'm just going to pop this on full screen because I can't quite see it. There we go. So this was another one from 1968, in October 1968 as well. And this was kind of a diagram of the ship that was being planned to use. And it gave sort of like a timeline as well of things as well. That, as I say, that was Apollo 8 that kind of managed to go into orbit, which was seen as a big step forward. But then they are already talking about Apollo 9, Apollo 10, Apollo 11 as well. That could be the lunar landing mission, possibly around August, September, it says there. But if not, it would be going on to Apollo 12. So as again, you can see sort of timelines slowly starting to build. The last one said that they would be aiming for the kind of end of the decade. This October one is talking about kind of August, September time as well. So you can see they're sort of building a kind of timeline of this. And that does change as well. One of the interesting things, I think, is when you're going through there as well, that you can kind of see as things are changing, as things are developing on both sides as well, on the American and on the Soviet side of things as well. This was a big kind of step forward, talking about that timeline as well. This was one of the first front page news items, I would say, that I saw in the lead up to the moon landing, and this was Apollo 8 returning back home. And I really like this headline: 537,000 miles and right every inch of the way. It went on to say about how accurate everything was, that just nothing went wrong by the sounds of it. Even the landing, they kind of landed so close to where they were meant to land off the coast of Hawaii. It just seemed to go kind of absolutely perfect from what they were saying. And again, affects that kind of timeline that they were looking at as to when the moon landing was actually going to happen. And this is kind of goes back to the tidbits I said about picking up on the way as well, that you're seeing things that I wouldn't have known that happened unless you looked in the newspapers at the time as well, that the more or less minutes after the kind of mission was confirmed to have gone okay, that the Queen had written a message to the President telling her that her and her husband were full of admiration for everyone involved and thought it was just a brilliant thing, and obviously really glad to hear that they returned home safely as well. So yes, I say that kind of little tidbit things that you kind of I certainly wouldn't have known that as well, that the Queen was writing letters and following it along the way as well, by the sounds of things. And this was from the same article. This was further down, and again goes back to that timeline that I mentioned as well. It talks about what comes next now that this historic flight of Apollo 8 has happened. Kind of what happens, what do Russia do about it, what do the Americans go on and do about it there as well. And you can see that Kennedy is saying that they're planning on sending men to the moon on October 1st, sorry, the deadline is October, I'm still talking about October, January 1st, 1970 is the kind of proposed date as well. So again, thinking about that timeline of events unfolding in real time as well. So another interesting one to consider. And this is when kind of things kind of start picking up pace a little bit as well, as kind of things go on. That was December, now we're into January 1969 as well. And you can see that they're already considering who is actually going to man the ship that goes to the moon as well. This was the 7th of January in the Welsh edition of the Liverpool Daily Post. And you can see this is what one thing that I found quite interesting was when I saw this article, I thought there was going to be a lot of kind of fanfare and secrecy about who's it going to be, who are they going to select. And this article names Borman, Lovell, and Anders as the possible crew for the journey to the moon. And you can see just 3 days later, very front page of the Daily Mirror, 10th of January 1969, you can see the first men for the moon have been announced. You can see Buzz Aldrin or Edwin Aldrin. Never thought about this. Now that I think about it, it makes sense that his first name obviously wasn't Buzz, but I never knew what his name actually was. But yeah, it turns out that it was Edwin Aldrin, not Buzz Aldrin, although he went by Buzz. And Neil Armstrong, they were pictured on the front page of there, but of course, a guy, Michael Collins, was involved in the mission as well, not necessarily out on the moon like these two, but definitely were involved as well. So it's the 10th of January. This one doesn't have a date, but it goes back to that connection that the Queen had to it as well. That apparently this is one that I didn't know that it happened. I don't know if it did actually go in and happen in the end. I did mean to do a little bit more research into this there, but it says that a royal message for the moon says a microfilm message from the Queen will be carried in Apollo 11 and left on the moon. The message says along the lines of, on behalf of the British people, I salute the skill and courage which has brought man to the moon. And I had the full kind of translation of the letter in there as well. Apologies, as I say, not something I was aware of. Maybe if anyone knows a little bit more about the moon landing, maybe you can let us know if that did actually happen or not, because as I say, it was certainly news to me. And then we're kind of getting closer to it, or closer to it, I should say. It's already happened here, a bit of a jump forward in time, because it was all kind of quite technical leading up to it there. So I thought I'd kind of try and jump forward in time a little bit to when things start kicking off. This was the 17th of July, but Tommy's totally gone blank. The launch of the ship, that's the word I'm looking for, launch. The launch of the ship happened the 16th of July, but this is from the Belfast newsletter. On the 17th of July, you can see a picture of Apollo 11 blasting off into space there. And it says the spaceship is streaking towards the moon today, carrying 3 Americans on man's first landing expedition to another celestial body. And I think that's kind of interesting when you think about the language being used as well, the celestial body as well. And I've seen another one that described the astronauts as the first Earthmen to go to another kind of celestial body, words to that effect as well. So I think the language at the time is really interesting as well. I thought it was interesting too about the flags of 136 nations, including the Soviet Union, on the ship itself, and a plaque to be left saying that that is where they had set foot as well. So as I say, that is the launch date itself. And then fast forward another couple of days to the 20th of July, as I say, must have lined up quite nicely. I'm sure the journalists all over the UK were quite happy with the timings that it lined up, so they were able to get their headlines. I'm sure everything was ready to go in advance, but printed first thing 20th of July morning, that they've got these kind of big headlines. And I say this is what I associate with the moon landing, is this kind of front page news. I will say as well that on the newspaper search nowadays, I'm sure somebody has covered this. I think it was Martin in the past, that if you are looking for like a big event like the moon landing, there is a filter on the newspaper search page to show front page news only. So I had popped in, I'm sure it was moon landing that I popped in, and I'm getting front page news only. So this is what I was specifically looking for, was this kind of big front page. This is it, man on the moon, with that sort of very blurry, hard to see image. I'm not sure if that is the microfilm or just the photography at the time. But as I say, that's kind of what I associate with it, not necessarily the kind of build up to it like that. And of course, it was front page news all over the place as well. That was in Commentary, the last one. This was the Aberdeen Press and Journal. They opted for a bit of a different approach with the kind of illustrated image of man on the moon rather than any of the photographs. Maybe they saw the photograph that Coventry were using and thought that they would go a little bit more kind of niche and clear, shall we say. But you can see, I like this kind of wording of it as well. Armstrong takes early stroll on the moon. I think that's just such a funny way of wording it when you think about obviously a small step for man, that kind of thing. And then Aberdeenshire Press and Journal have just said, took an early stroll on the moon. I think that was just as they almost diminishing sort of way of doing it. Maybe it's meant tongue in cheek after all. And another, as I say, this is kind of now into the kind of aftermath of it as well. This was on one of the front pages, talking about the moon landing. And this said that a fortune waiting for moon heroes. And again, it's not something I'd ever really thought about what happened to these men after. Obviously, you saw them previously when they were kind of older men. They would still be brought out for anniversaries or big space events, like Gordon says, the Kennedy Space Center. You've seen them there on TV and things, but I didn't really think much about the kind of impact on them. And this kind of whole article, or whole section of the article, I should say, was dedicated to what would happen for these men. It said that they were on £10,000 a year, I think it said they were on when they were planning the mission. And then this just listed off all the various things that would happen. It was going on about giant firms bidding for their face to be vice president, even if just in name alone, not necessarily doing anything. About the kind of airlines looking for sponsorship things. One of them even said that Neil Armstrong was being tipped to run for president, which I found really interesting. I don't know how far that thought ever actually got, or if this was pure speculation, but an interesting one. And I also really like this as well, was when Buzz Aldrin's wife was with her 11-year-old son, and someone asked the son if he'd like to be an astronaut too. And Mrs. Aldrin said, "Oh Lord, I couldn't go through this twice." I thought that was a really funny bit as well, because it did go on to say about their kind of wives and children and what they would think if they would just want these two or these kind of three crew of men just to have a relaxing time now. They've been to the moon. What more can you possibly do? No need to go back up or anything. So I thought that was an interesting thing to think about too, was the kind of wives and family side of things as well. And talking about wives and families as well, I really liked this excerpt from the Sunday Post, titled Moon Babies. So this is a couple, Mr. and Mrs. Jack Robertson of Montefieth, which is kind of just up the road from Dundee here. Their son was born 13 minutes after Apollo 11 lifted off. And as a result, they called their son Neil Edwin Michael Robertson, named after all three astronauts in the crew. Personally, if I was Neil Edwin Michael Robertson, I'd be disappointed that they didn't go for Buzz instead of Edwin. I think Neil Buzz Michael, or Buzz Neil Michael, whatever it might be, I think that would be a much cooler name. I'd definitely be opting for Buzz if those were my three middle names. But a nice little touch as well, kind of got me thinking about what other events might people be named after. Their names in our family trees that might correlate to a historical event like this, that I've maybe just not kind of put two and two together and realized that might be where the name actually came from. But as I say, something I've started thinking about as well. I'm not sure how far I'm going to get with this as well, but something to think about, I think, when you're thinking about historical events and the kind of people that were the kind of ancestors that lived through these as well. Another thing me and Ellie were talking about was the kind of events that our ancestors lived through, the changes that they would have seen over time as well. And I think, as I say, it's an interesting spin on that. Are they even named after anything? And as Victoria says, is anyone here named after an astronaut or anything at all? Are you named after anyone in particular? My name is, of course, Liam. Rumours that my dad named me after the Irish singer Liam Clancy. I think he does deny that, but that was the story anyway, that is perhaps where the name came from. But yeah, is anyone named after anyone in particular? If anyone is, like you say, an astronaut or beyond as well. So it'd be interesting to see, I think, as well. I did ask when we were starting off that session as well to see what people's kind of memories of the moon landings were as well. And I think we've got some answers in, and I think it's interesting to see what people remember about it as well, personal connections to it too. And I did also ask about family connections to the moon landing. And Kim did start us off quite early, actually, saying she had a family connection to the moon landing. My dad's cousin was the director of Parkes Observatory that helped bring images to the screen. So if you do have any memories of the moon landing, you've got Kim, Billy's dad's cousin, to thank for that. He played a part in that, which I think is a really cool connection to have. I wasn't sure if anyone would have a connection, being that, as I said earlier, we do have a transatlantic audience, but I know most of us are probably in the UK and Ireland, so I wasn't expecting that. So you've definitely stumped me there, Kim. That is a really cool one, as I say, especially when all these other comments, people like Jan saying that they were allowed to stay up very late to watch TV. As I say, it was early hours of the 20th, so must have been very late for a 9-year-old staying up to watch that. As I say, I think knowing that your family have a connection to making that happen for all people, as I say, like Jan, like Gillian as well, a few days before Gillian's 10th birthday in front of the TV watching the moon landing as well. And I like this as well. Some people were staying up late, but this was forward planning from Janet's parents that you and your brother were sent to bed early so you could be woken up to watch the landing as it happened on TV. That's probably the route I would take. Even if it was nowadays, I'd probably be going to bed quite early, setting an alarm. I'm not sure I could survive staying up that late to watch that as well, but definitely an interesting angle on it too. And Andrew saying there's a thing on BBC Sounds, 13 Minutes to the Moon, explains things really well. I think that's something I'll be checking out over the weekend, because this little kind of dive into the moon landing that I've done over the past couple hours, I should say, has been quite interesting. Something that, as I learned quite a lot on, even just looking through the newspaper articles. So that kind of explanation of things, of the actual mission itself, the more kind of technical element of it, which, as I say, I'm neither qualified nor did I want to kind of go too far into that side of things today, but definitely an interesting one as well there as well. And I think it's quite sad, actually, from Jan as well, that one of the petrol companies, perhaps Shell, gave away little tokens to celebrate the moon landing. But even though her dad collected them, she gave them all to her brothers. They were not regarded as being the sort of thing me and my sister would be interested in. As I say, I think that's really sad, Jan. Bear with me. I'm going to have a look on eBay. I'm going to find these tokens. I'll get you the full collection these days, because, as I say, I think that's quite sad to think about, that you weren't allowed to get those tokens, because, like you say, at the time it wouldn't be. It's boys that want to be astronauts, I suppose, isn't it? That would be the kind of time for quite many years after that as well, I suppose, would have been the general feeling. So, as I say, I'm sure there's a collection on eBay. I'm sure we'll have a look and see what we can do there, maybe. And did you do a lot of memories on the moon landing as well? I think it's cool hearing people have kind of been over to see that as well. I know someone mentioned the Kennedy Space Center, and William says that Apollo 11 is on display in Washington, D.C. I remember seeing it when I visited in 2000 on my first visit to Virginia for my grandparents' 50th anniversary. I think that's cool as well, and people have kind of been over there and seen, as I say, Kennedy Space Center. And I didn't know Apollo 11 was on display. That's really cool to think about as well. And as I say, I think I've become, I was going to say a buff, but I don't know enough to call myself a bit of a moon landing buff, but got very much into it over the last few hours. I think, as I say, that would be the sort of the thing I'm interested in now. BBC Sounds, going to see Apollo 11. I think I've got a bit of a taste for it, I think. And I like this as well, a true family historian, and having a scrapbook somewhere in my attic of the moon landing. I think it would mean more to me now than when it happened. Yeah, I think that's the thing as well. One of those things that you maybe did as a bit of a hobby at the time, maybe didn't mean a great deal to you at the time, but now that you've got that, looking back on it, especially with the anniversary as well, that would be a really cool thing to see. Let's see. We've got a lot of love for 13 minutes on there as well. So I think I'm definitely going to have to check that out, because a lot of people mention that. So, as I say, I've got a train to catch not too far. So I will definitely have a listen to that on the train. We've got 2 people named after things. I'm sure Ellie's mentioned this before. Probably Eleanor Rigby. I like that as well. That is a good song to be named after. And Canon potentially named after, named after the Danish au pair of my dad's colleague. That is quite a random name to pull, but I like that as well. I like this. I think that's the nice thing about names, that you never know when someone's heard a name for the first time and thought, I like that name. I think I'll have that for myself, kind of thing. I'll call my child that. I think that's cool. I think that's the cool thing about names, whether you're named after something famous or just someone that your parents knew, for example. I think it's always cool. So, as I say, I am going to try and wrap up in the next kind of 5 minutes or so, just to give myself time to get nice and tidied up for a sharp exit not long after 5 for this lovely 3.5-hour train that I'm about to catch in the heat down south. But I did at the start of the session ask what you would like to see more of on these sessions. If there was anything, topics or segments or anything like that that you'd like to see covered, what might that be? And as I say, Ellie has been furiously writing notes down as we've been going on. But I will read out a couple more as well. As I say, not showing any favoritism here because I am just picking the ones that I've seen. So we'll have a look through and see. I like this one as well from Heather. Not being biased, but it'd be good to have a session on the differences between the records in Scotland, England, Wales, and Northern Ireland, such as dates recorded on certificates, what's available, what censuses are available, where are they available. I think that's important as well because, like, say, my personal research is very Scotland and Ireland focused, whereas I know people like Ellie's, for example, is very focused in Wales. You might not always have a chance to do too much of another country, and therefore you don't know a great deal about it. So when somewhere like Wales pops up in my research, I'd obviously go and ask Ellie. But if it did pop up in my research and I was unsure, I think having that kind of session and just kind of covering what's available, where is it available, as I say, especially things like the differences in censuses or what parish records look like. I think that's a nice idea as well. I think that especially when we've got obviously me in Scotland, Ellie's in Scotland too, but Ellie covering Wales, I've got sort of a Scotland covered, Rosewood of England covered, we've got Jen over in America, so we've got a few people, maybe that's a group session almost we could do, covering different things as well. Let's see, what else did I miss? A lot of kind of along the same lines of this as well, kind of case studies almost as well, whether it's like kind of brick wall stuff and the case studies as well. I think that's been a popular suggestion, so definitely one that we can look at doing. And I like this as well from William, that the history of Findmypast from the beginning, how Alex and Max, you know, you are an original fan if you remember the Alex and Max days. I think I'd barely even started. I think Max left probably a matter of months after me starting at Findmypast. So I've got very little recollection of that time period. So you'll know more about that than I will, William, because that is kind of previous to or kind of in line with my time starting there. And then, yeah, obviously through lockdown and where we are today as well. Lockdown is obviously a big thing. Ellie did magnificently with the team getting these sessions going through lockdown as well, through the kind of post-Alex era, shall we say. We'll break it down into that kind of time period as well. But yeah, to say that'd be an interesting one. I think I'd probably learn a lot as well because kind of, as I say, I only really started around that time. So I think that would be a good one too. And we'll finish on this one. Gillian saying, finding out how surnames originated can be interesting and where they originated as well. I think that's cool, like what I just said about first names as well, where your first name originated. I think knowing where second names originated or how they originated. Are they related to a location, to an occupation, as a lot of them are? So I think that would be an interesting one because I think there's real clues in names, whether it's first names or surnames in your family history. There are real clues in there. So I think kind of doing a session on sort of surnames and where they originated, how they originated, would be a really good one as well. Oh, I'm just going to save William's comment for future. He has sent a link to a website showing Apollo 11. I'm definitely going to check that out because, as I say, I've got a taste for the moon landings now. I'm sure there's going to be programs on TV tomorrow, so I'll get a chance to kind of get involved in that and get more, because I say this kind of few hours I spent with the newspapers this afternoon was definitely eye-opening, definitely very, very interesting. And I'm glad my sessions lined up with the moon landing as well, because if not, might never have found. Maybe this is a newfound career for me. This time next year, I'll be doing live sessions for NASA. Never mind Findmypast, I'll be at the Kennedy Space Center myself, maybe. Obviously not, I'll be here. Maybe talk about the moon landing this time next year. But yeah, as to say, I am going to wrap up at 10 to 5, 16:49 at the moment, or 16:48, because I've realized my computer is a minute ahead, it seems. But we are going to wrap up so I can, as I say, make a sharpest exit for my train. I see a lot of suggestions for what people would like to see coming in. As I say, we are taking a kind of note of all of these as well. So you might start seeing some of the suggestions that you've mentioned being implemented as well. So thank you all very much for your great suggestions. Myself and Ellie will be having a look through those in more detail next week. But otherwise, thank you all very much indeed for joining me and Ellie on another Findmypast Live. It is always our pleasure to be with you here on Friday afternoon, seeing you off into the weekend. Hope you have a lovely weekend. Hope the weather stays great for you, whatever you're up to. And we will speak to you all very soon.